Oh, now I'm starting to see. Okay, here come the attendees. Yeah, that must have been it. 61, 63. Coming. Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a second. Attendees are still streaming into the webinar, so I'm going to just be quiet for just a few more minutes or seconds while we let everybody into the webinar. People are still streaming in, so I'm going to give it just a couple more minutes. We're at about half the registrants so far, so everybody just hold tight and we'll get started very shortly. Okay, I think since this session is being recorded and will be accessible later, I'll go ahead and get started, even though people are still coming into the session. So, hello everybody. My name is Nikki Cunningham. I'm one of the pre-health advisors here at Columbia. And I'm joined today by the other two pre-health advisors, Megan Rigney and Davina Colwell.
Everyone.
I think they're gonna, hello, there they are. They are going to turn off their cameras and I'm going to lead the presentation today, but just so you know, there is a team of 3 of us and we are all the pre-health advising staff here at Columbia. So we've got a lot to cover today, so I'm going to get started. I want to make note first of all of just a little bit of the information on this opening slide. This email is the general email where you can send questions to us at our group email. And then this URL, which I'll post again at the end of the presentation, but this is our website. And a lot of what I'm covering today is accessible via our website. There's lots of information on our website. So taking note of that now, if you don't get a chance to do it right now, like I said, I'll put it up at the end of our session today. Okay, so the topics that I'm going to go over today are the advising system, the pre-medical committee process, academic pre-medical preparation. And just to note, when I say pre-medical, I'm incorporating and meaning to refer to a number of different divisions within medicine, dentistry, podiatry, optometry. There's lots of different health professions that we advise. So if I default and say pre-medical, please note that all of those career goals are included in what our office provides. So the academic pre-health or pre-medical preparation, what you'll be taking in your first semester. I'll talk a little bit about the pre-med handbook that's available to you. I'm going to go over the personal competencies, pre-professional competencies that medical schools are looking to assess in their candidates. Talk a little bit about some of the opportunities available to you at Columbia, and then just some miscellaneous things to consider as you anticipate embarking on your pre-med journey here at Columbia. Okay, so sorry. The first thing to know is that you really have a community of advisors here at Columbia ready to help you with different parts of your time here. So the sort of main advising center is called the Center for Student Advising. That is where your main advisor, who you should have received information about and will be connecting with in coming days and weeks, is located. That's your main advisor, who's going to be your resource throughout your whole 4 years for all sorts of nuts and bolts questions about your time here. Then there's our unit, which is a subdivision of the Center for Student Advising, where Megan Devine and I are housed, and that's pre-professional advising. That covers pre-health and pre-med. It also covers pre-law and pre-business, just so you know, but that is where we're housed. Then there's departmental advisors. So once you declare your major in your sophomore year, you'll be assigned somebody in your particular department or discipline that will help you with a lot of the nuts and bolts of progressing through that department's requirements for their major. There's also the Center for Career Education, which is an office that is dedicated to actually helping you with all sorts of parts of your progress towards postgraduate degree, postgraduate employment. So everything from helping you build your resume and create your resume to helping you find and apply for internships, and also then, of course, job placement and job opportunities after Columbia. Then there's also the Undergraduate Global Engagement Office, which does a number of different things, but what might sort of pop up in your brain is something that would be interesting for you is that's who you would go to talk about and get advice about study abroad. And then there's the Undergraduate Research and Fellowships Office, and they, as it's quite descriptively says, is helping connect you and promote your participation in research while you're at Columbia. It also helps you locate and apply for fellowships. Some of those would be postgraduate fellowship opportunities like the Rhodes Scholarship or the Marshall or the Truman, but also things that you might apply for and be awarded while you're a student at Columbia. But so there's a large pool of people here ready to help you. But what we're going to focus on today is pre-professional advising and specifically pre-health advising. So what do we do as pre-health advisors? So one of the things that we do is we maintain a listserv that we encourage you all to join. That's how we communicate items of interest to our pre-health community. We also maintain our website, which I showed you the URL of, and we'll give it to you again at the end of this presentation. We do a lot of one-on-one individual advising. We're here for advising appointments during the year. We run a lot of workshops and programs. We do a lot of workshops that are designed to help you once you're in the application process. But we also do things that are relevant for you along the way. For example, we run a summer opportunities panel where you can come and hear about different ideas and get ideas about what to do with some of your summers while you're at Columbia. We host guest lectures. We bring med schools often on campus, and you can hear from deans of admission at different medical schools and learn about their particular programs. We go to conferences and maintain and relationships with the health professional schools, with the medical schools, and so that we can serve as a liaison and advocate for you in our help with placement of you in the different programs. And then another big part of what we do, which is not terribly relevant for you right now, but we like to put it on your radar so that you know about it down the line. But a big part of what we do is we help you when you're in the application process. And part of that involves what we call the pre-health or pre-medical advisory committee. And we create letters of evaluation or what's called a committee letter of evaluation, which is a sort of, we help you with the various parts of your application. We help you collect your letters of recommendation. And then we write this committee letter, which is a sort of narrative presentation introduction of you to the medical schools, covering you from your childhood and background up to the current day. Like I said, presenting you, introducing you, and your preparation for the profession. That's not something that you need to worry about right now, but it's just important for you to know that that is a big process and a big part of what we do as pre-professional advisors. Okay. Oops. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about now is a little bit, give you a little bit of a sense of what it means to be pre-med at Columbia. So an important thing for you to know is that pre-med is not a major or a concentration. It's not something that you sign up for per se or apply for. It's, to be honest, it's really just a self-identification that tells us and anyone else that you talk to that you are intending while you're at Columbia to prepare to go to medical or other health professional school. So being pre-med really just involves a bunch of things that you need to do while you're a student at Columbia. So first and foremost, take the prerequisite coursework. Get involved in activities that demonstrate and investigate your interest in healthcare and medicine. Get involved in activities that demonstrate your commitment to service. Test your motivation by exposing yourself to places where doctors actually work, and then take the qualifying exam. Take the MCAT or the DAT for dentistry. Okay, so a lot of people wonder, certainly coming into college, what should they study? What should they major in if their goal is to go to medical school? So we first and foremost tell you, try not to feel tied to what you think you should do and really spend some time finding out what you want to do. Any course of study at all is compatible with going to medical school. We've had dance majors. We, of course, have a lot of bio majors just because people are interested in biology if they want to go into medicine, but really anything is compatible. Lots of engineers. Of course, some of you are engineers, a lot of engineers go to medical school. So really, truly any course of study is compatible with going on to medical school. And some people think, oh, I have to major in a science because that's how I show them that I really love science. Then conversely, some people think, no, if I major in a non-science, that'll really stand out to them. Neither is necessarily true. What's really true is that they would like you to find what you really love and do it and do well in it. And that's what impresses them the most. And that's what makes you stand out, is if you look like somebody who's really found something that they really love and have pursued it and done, advanced coursework in that area. So we encourage you to explore, dream big, discover your interests, and follow them. In terms of course scheduling and working through the pre-medical prerequisites, there really is no set schedule or timeline. We're going to lay out the curriculum for you in this session and show you sort of how you can proceed through it. But there really is no one set path, and there are many possible paths for you to follow. We have students that come in interested in medicine like yourself and start in semester one and just, proceed through. And then we have people that decide they don't want to go to medical school until they're juniors or seniors. And we work with them and figure out what makes sense and help them, begin moving through the curriculum then. So there's really no set lockstep course that you need to follow. And the other thing to just put on your radar is that most Columbia students, about 85% each year, take a gap year between undergrad and medical school. It has really become the preponderant norm to not go straight through. I know from your perspective, and maybe if any parents are listening, from parents' perspective, the idea is that you go straight through. You don't take a gap, but that has really changed and is no longer the norm. And all of our peer institutions have the same stats, about 85% take gap time. Okay. So I'm going to start going through the pre-medical curriculum now. It's a lot. There's a lot of courses and a lot of little permutations within each course sequence. So I hope you'll bear with me. The group that's listening today is actually comprised of incoming first years, transfers, so people who did 1 or maybe even 2 years at another institution before coming to Columbia this year, and then students that are in our combined plan, which means that they've done usually 3 years at another institution and are coming to complete 2 years in our engineering school. So although there's a big group of people here, I am going to go through the curriculum as if you're a first year. So what you would do if you're coming in as a first year, and I apologize to the transfers and the combined plan students because I know your situation is a little bit different, but you've got a great advisor who is poised to help you figure out where in the sequence you need to join our curriculum, and they will help you do that. Okay, so I was trying to think of something funny to say about how much pre-medical coursework there is, but there's nothing funny about how much pre-medical coursework there is because it just is what it is. There's a lot of stuff that you need to do to prepare to go on to medical school. And they're all great classes and you're gonna have a great time in your pre-med courses. But there is a lot that you have to sort of work through. So the curriculum is a full year of English or what they're looking for are writing intensive courses where you develop your critical reading, writing, and thinking abilities. There's an expectation of 2 years of chemistry. So that's 1 year of general or inorganic chemistry and 1 year of organic chemistry, both with the requisite labs. A full year of biology, again with the lab. A year of physics with lab. 1 year of mathematics, which is typically broken down into the med schools that require math like to see 1 semester of calculus and 1 semester of statistics. A semester of introductory psychology, and then a semester of biochem. That's just 1 semester of lecture without a lab. So now I'm going to go through and show you sort of how Columbia students meet each of these prereqs. Okay, so many med schools, like I said, require 2 semesters of English. And again, they're looking for writing intensive courses. So everyone coming into Columbia, whether you're a college student or an engineer, is going to take a semester of university writing. Whether you do it this fall or whether you do it in the spring, you will do 1 semester is just going to be knocked off this requirement immediately by this course. How you fill out the second semester will vary a little bit depending upon whether or not you're a college student or an engineering student. So if you're a college student, you're going to take a full year sequence called Literature Humanities. And then in your sophomore year, you're going to take a full year sequence called Contemporary Civilization. Those are both incredibly writing intensive courses, and those are going to round out your English requirement quite handily with the medical schools. But just so you know, any 1 semester course in the English department would also round out this year. And so for my engineers, not my engineers, our engineers here at Columbia that you're coming, we recommend for your core, although you don't take the full core, we recommend if you're interested in medicine that you take Literature Humanities because that's the sequence that just without question both fulfills your core requirement and seems to easily fulfill the English requirement for the medical schools. However, Contemporary Civilization, that full year sequence does also seem to work at med schools. But then the other thing is, like I said, any 1 semester lit course in the English department, doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's in the English department, will also round out this requirement. And the one thing to make note of, engineers out there, is that the global core courses are not going to meet this requirement, unfortunately. Occasionally a global core course is housed in the English department. It's very rare because the spirit of the global core is comparative by nature, and English courses tend not to be comparative between national cultures and languages and whatnot. But occasionally there's a course that fits in the English department that works for the global course. So that would be the only caveat, that if you might be able to find a course in English that covers the global core, but that's not guaranteed. Okay, so at Columbia, we start off our students with chemistry. Both in CC and Cs, everybody starts off with chemistry in their first year. Organic chemistry then follows either in your second or third year. It tends to break down that in the college, our students do Orgo in their junior year. Often engineers do Orgo in their sophomore year. It kind of depends on the curriculum of your school. But everybody starts with general chemistry. So this is the sequence that everyone can take. You don't need to do anything to register for the 1403-1404 sequence. So it would be 1403 this fall. Note that as a co-requisite to 1403, you have to also be enrolled in Calculus 1, so Math 1101. And then for the chemistry lab, and the chemistry lab is a 1 semester, 3 credit course. That counts as a year of lab. And so one thing to know about the way the courses are structured at Columbia is every course requires, every lecture sequence has a lab component that the med schools want to see you complete. At Columbia, sometimes that means a 1 semester, 3 credit course. It is still a year's worth of lab, but we package it into 1 semester and give you 3 credits for it. So some of the courses like GChem have a 1 semester, 3 credit lab. Other courses, our Orgo sequence and our introductory physics sequence, break the lab up. So you do physics 1, lecture physics 1 lab, etc. So sometimes the year of lab is completed in 2 semesters, and sometimes the year of lab is completed in 1 semester, but they all count as a year of lab. And like I said, this sequence is appropriate for all students in CCNCs, and everyone can register for this sequence. So now I'm going to cover some more advanced chemistry sequences. To place into the advanced chemistry sequences, you need to take a placement exam, which will be offered later this summer. So if after taking the exam, you'll be told where you place. And so if you take the exam, you could be placed into the 1604. What this is you skip the first semester of general chemistry and you go into a very intensive second semester of Gen Chem. It's just paced a little bit more quickly than the regular Gen Chem 2 is. And then the co-requisite for this is Calc 2. So if you do this, if you skip the first semester of Gen Chem and jump into this intensive semester, you can take either the regular lab, the 1500, you're still allowed to take that one if you want, or there is an intensive Gen lab that goes alongside this lecture sequence. Either is fine. After you complete this course, 1604, with a C or better, if you have a 4 or 5 on your AP or IB, you'll receive 3 credits of chemistry on your transcript, which can be important in terms of rounding out your chemistry requirements. For the schools that want to see that full year of GChem, those AP credits can help you round that out. You could place into this course and not have AP or IB credit coming to you. If that's the case, you could end up down the line short on your chemistry credits. So if that's your situation, if you place into this higher level and you want to take it, but you don't have the AP or IB credit, it'd be good to check in with a pre-health advisor and we can sort of talk you through what the options are for making sure you're covered in terms of the requirement of that full year of GChem. Okay, you could also get placed into a sequence that, you know, your competency in chemistry is so advanced that you don't need to do GChem at all. In which case you would start Orgo this year. And that's 2045 in the fall, 2046 in the spring. If you do this sequence, you still need to go back and do the GChem lab because it's not comping you out of the GChem lab. It's just the lecture that you're getting passed through. So you still go back and you take the intensive GChem lab and then also the Orgo lab, which again, the Orgo lab here can be split into 2 semesters, 1.5 points each for a total of 3. Or there's also an intensive Orgo lab that's 1 semester and 3 credits. Again, with this sequence, after you complete it with a C or better, you'll get 6 credits. If you have a 4 or 5 on the AP or IB exam, you'll get 6 credits, which will fill out all the GChem that you will have passed through for the pre-med requirements. Okay. So Orgo. So for students who take general chemistry or intensive general chemistry in their first year, most often then go on to take Orgo, either sophomore or junior year. This is the Orgo sequence that everybody does, Orgo 1 and 2. And the lab, again, Orgo lab 1 and 2. Okay, so everybody has to take Intro to Bio. There's no exam that jettisons you past our Intro to Bio sequence, no matter how great you did on your AP exam. You need to go through and take our Intro to Bio class. Biology is normally taken by the college students in their sophomore years. Some engineers wait and do it in their junior year. This is the sequence for Bio, Intro to Bio 1, Intro to Bio 2, 2005, 2006. And then the lab is 1 semester, again, 1 semester, 3 credit course called Contemporary Bio Lab. this is a phenomenal, this is really a phenomenal sequence of courses that we have here at Columbia. They're very rigorous. You may start to hear some grumbling or some, a lot of upperclassmen have a lot of opinions about our bio sequence, and I will tell you to la it a little bit, because we have a brilliant and much beloved instructor of this course, and this course will introduce you to biology in a way that frankly is going to blow your mind a little bit in a good way, and it will certainly prepare you in abundance for taking the MCAT down the line and for medical school. It's really a tremendous foundational course in biology. Just as a caveat, engineers, you don't have to take, if you are majoring in biomedical engineering, so we call it BME, biomedical engineering, if that is your major within the engineering school, you have a series of labs that you will take with them that will fulfill the biolab requirements, so you don't have to do the biolab if you're an engineer majoring in BME. And also note that general chemistry is a prerequisite for bio, so it is not an option to start bio in your first year at Columbia. A lot of the transfer students, we're unusual in that. A lot of colleges start their freshman, our first years with bio. So a lot of transfers come in with bio already, which is, it's a unique quality at Columbia that we have general chemistry as a prerequisite. So nobody does bio in their first year at Columbia. Okay, so if you're interested in medicine, but also potentially interested in majoring in environmental science or in sustainable development, we have a slight different sequence for you to follow, which will both cover the basis of being pre-med, but also set you up to pursue environmental science or sustainable development as your major. So what you would do is you would take, instead of UN 2005 in the bio department, you would take the 3EB course in environmental biology, and then join our bio sequence in the second term. Chemistry is not a prerequisite for the environmental bio, so this is something that you could start in your first year if you wanted to, or you could wait and just substitute the semester in your sophomore year to do the environmental bio, to start that sequence in your sophomore year. It's up to you. And then you would go on and do the bio lab as well. The only important caveat to note with this sequence is that the environmental bio course does not cover all the content that you need for the MCAT in quite the way that our regular bio sequence does, the 2005 sequence. So if you do this route, by all means do it if this is what you're interested in doing, but just note that this bio 1 might require you to do some self-study of concepts for the MCAT, because they won't be covered in this sequence. Okay, so physics. Like in chemistry, physics has a number of different potential sequences that you can follow to fulfill the physics requirement, and it all depends on the school that you're in, college or engineering, and then potentially within the college what you're maybe thinking about majoring in. Whether or not you're C's or CC, if you're a C student and you're in the college and interested in potentially majoring in physics or biophysics, you should probably try to take physics in your first year. So C students should take physics in their first year. College students interested in upper level work in physics specifically should try to knock off physics in their first year as well. I mean, anybody's welcome to take, GChem and physics together. People often do that, but you really have to do physics your first year if you're a C student or a college student interested in a physics related major. Okay, so the first option for physics, this course is great, and it is appropriate for all pre-medical students in the college. Engineers can't take this sequence, but all college pre-med students, this is the most common sequence taken. It's the 1200, 1201, 1202, and then the lab, again, broken up into 2 semesters, general physics lab 1 and 2. Okay, so the next 3 options I'm going to go through are designed for some college science majors and all the engineering students. So, and with the sequence from the previous slide, you do the Physics 1 lecture and the Physics 1 lab together in one semester, the Physics 2 lecture, the Physics 2 lab together in one semester. With the sequences I'm about to go over, you do the entire lecture sequence before you do the lab. You don't do the lab alongside the lecture sequence. Okay, so the first one is 1401, the 1400 level sequence. And the co-requisites for this are Calc 1 and Calc 2. This option is appropriate for any CC or C students, although some C's majors and CC science majors will require additional physics, but this is the basic physics sequence that most of our engineers take. Okay, so then there's a higher level of the 1600 sequence, co-requisite Calc 2 and Calc 3 instead of Calc 1 and Calc 2, Calc 2 and Calc 3. This option is really only appropriate for students with really advanced preparation in both physics and mathematics. It's a very accelerated course. So you just have to know, yourself what the level of your preparation is and whether or not, you can handle the accelerated level of this course. Okay, so there's an even more accelerated level, which is a 2800 level. This really is, only appropriate for students with a very, very, very strong background in physics and math. But in order to take this course, you actually have to take a placement exam. We need to make sure that you're ready to handle the level of this course. So if you are interested in taking that placement exam, it will be offered later this summer, but the only way to get into this course is to actually place into it. And I will say that with all these different levels, the best thing that you can do is find the one that's the right amount of challenge for you. Med schools are not going to be impressed if you took as a college student, you took 1400, even though it was really too advanced for you and you didn't do that well in it. That's not going to impress them. They're going to, they're not going to know the difference between 1200, 400, 1400, 1600. They're all introductory level sequences. And so you really need to find the one that's right for you and not think that anybody's going to be impressed by, taking a higher level one. The best thing you can do is find the one that really reflects your preparation. Okay, so if you do any of these 1400, 1600, or the 2800 level of physics, then these are the different lab options. They're all options. You can, even if you take 1400 level physics, as a college student, you can go back and take the 1200 lab sequence if you want. Or you can take a 1400 level. These are one semester courses. So you finish the whole lecture sequence and then you do a one semester lab for 3 points. And then there's the intermediate lab, which is really for junior and senior physics majors. You really have to be doing advanced work in physics to do that lab. Okay, so math. So a lot of med schools don't specify a specific math requirement. And those that do generally say that they want to see a year of college math. And that can truly be any 2 college math courses. However, if you're asking what is ideal, and occasionally even specified by some med schools, but mostly just the ideal, is 1 semester of calc and 1 semester of statistics. Statistics is the math of medicine. There's a lot of statistics on the MCAT. So, and then a lot of med schools want to see a semester of stats. So, all things considered, it's really good to try to fit a semester of stats into your time at Columbia. These are the calc courses: Calc 1, Calc 2, Calc 3. There's also a Calc 4 for the engineers. So these are the calc different courses. Here's the stats courses. And to be honest, there's probably other ones out there. The takeaway from this very dense slide is that any stats course you take, 1 semester of stats that you take, will do the trick for pre-med. So whether or not you're a psych major and you end up taking the psych stats, or you're an engineer and you take one of the engineering stats, it doesn't really matter. Any stats course will fulfill this requirement. If you don't have a department telling you which stats course you need to take, either of these are open to you. Intro to stats, one's without calc, one's with. Again, take the one that fits your preparation and your interest. We will say, just as a small caveat, is that the one course that seems to have the most amount of biostatistics, so statistics relevant to your interest in medicine, is the 1100. So if you're interested in taking a stats course, you don't care which one it is because you don't need it for your major, and you just want the one that will be sort of most reflective of your interest in medicine, then I would, we would recommend taking the 1101. Okay, biochemistry, one semester of biochemistry, there's no lab attached to it, is currently required by many medical schools. It seems to increase every year. A new school will put it as a prereq, but the sum total is that, it will make your application truly more viable at many more schools if you work in biochem. Also, a lot of biochemistry content on the MCAT, so a semester of biochem will be a really good thing to add to your preparation. We have two versions here, 3300, 1401. They have slightly different prerequisite structures, which you can look at in the bulletin and in the directory of classes. Either one is perfectly great for preparing for the MCAT and for medical school. Okay, psychology. Now, most med schools don't specify a behavioral science requirement. Some do. There's some schools out there that want to see a semester of behavioral science, but most don't. The reason to take psychology, apart from it being an interesting course, is that there's a section of the MCAT that has a lot of psychology content on it. And so we recommend taking psychology as a way to prepare for the MCAT. Like I said, it's not required by most med schools, and you can self-study the content that is on the MCAT. But if you want a course at Columbia that will help you prepare for the MCAT and also just be really interesting, we recommend the Science of Psychology as a really good introductory psych course at Columbia. Again, that will help you prepare for the MCAT. Just as a little note, the psychology content is only on the MCAT. It's not on the dental qualifying exam, the DAT. So pre-dental students should only take psychology if they're interested in the subject. Okay, so that was a lot of slides, 20 if anybody was counting. There's a lot of prerequisites, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news. There are occasionally additional prerequisites that are by individual schools. So what we just walked you through is going to cover a lot of schools in terms of your preparation. In fact, the vast majority of schools will be, you will have covered it with that content. But some med schools have, like I said, some schools have they'd like to see some behavioral science. Some schools have additional bio courses that they want to see. So the California state schools, the Texas state schools like to see some additional, beyond the introductory bio, they like to see a little bit of extra bio. So like I said, while our general pre-med prerequisites are going to cover the vast majority of schools, we encourage you to be aware of some of the schools that you think you might want to apply to down the line. Now, it's way too premature for you to be thinking about what schools to apply to, but everybody applies to their state school. So you should know what your state school is and keep an eye on what their prerequisites are. Everybody's got a dream school that they want to, they know they definitely want to apply to X dream school. Keep an eye on what their prerequisites are, right? We're not expecting you to keep an eye on every single school and know right now what you're going to apply to, but you can sort of be keeping your eye on some of the schools that down the line are going to be relevant schools for you. Okay, I just want to cover this again so there's no confusion about it. So policies around, from the med schools, policies around what they'll accept or not accept in terms of AP credit in place of college coursework varies. And we've got a list available on our website of the different medical schools and their policies around AP. It seems that in general, overall, med schools will accept AP credit to round out math requirements, to round out calc, and like I said, more importantly, to round out chemistry requirements. And like I said, if you do get placed into one of those accelerated chemistry sequences, you may need that AP credit to round out your credit totals for chemistry. But again, this is down the line, but if you're concerned about it at all, once the school year starts, you can certainly come talk to one of us about what you placed into and what your options are and how you're thinking about your education and filling out the prereqs. Okay, so congratulations, we have made it through the coursework portion of our program. So let's talk about what medical schools are looking for and what you can do while you're at Columbia to prepare. beyond the coursework. And there's a lot to do beyond the coursework. So they are looking to see that you've exposed yourself to medicine and to patient care. They want to make sure that you know what you're getting into, you've seen it up close and personal. Your decision to go to med school is not based on having watched the entire series of House multiple times. They want to make sure that you have really seen it in real life and your motivation is strong. They also want to see, and this is kind of connected to that, but it's a bigger category, that you have knowledge of and personal motivation for medicine. You know, the medicine is a wonderful but challenging career path, and you have to have an internal fire for it, right? You can't go to medical school because somebody else wants you to go to med school. You can't go to medical school because it sounds cool to be a doctor. You have to go to medical school because you have an internal passion for this based upon exposure to and knowledge of the profession. They're looking for evidence of maturity. They're looking for evidence of strong interpersonal skills. They're looking for leadership and a depth of involvement. They're more impressed with you having 2 or 3 things that you did for multiple years and maybe rose to some leadership than they are if you're just a member in a bunch of clubs. Service, medicine's a service profession. They definitely like to see evidence that you have a service orientation in your background. A willingness to challenge yourself. They want to see people that assess their weaknesses and work to strengthen them. People who are willing to step outside their comfort zone, that don't always have to feel comfortable and like everything's in their wheelhouse. They like to see people stretching themselves. And then of course, metrics. They're looking for strong academic performance and strong performance on the qualifying exams, either the MCAT or the DAT. Okay, so I mentioned earlier on the pre-professional competencies. So a few years ago, the AAMC, which is the Association of American Medical Colleges, which is the governing body of all the medical school, accredited med schools in the US, got together a board of people and said, like, let's actually write down what we want in our incoming med students. What are we looking for when we assess their applications? And they came up with a bunch of scientific and thinking and reasoning competencies as well, but then they came up with 9 inter and intrapersonal competencies. So I'm going to run through them a little bit because these are good things to have, like I said, sort of as earworms going forward of things that you are going to want to be able to show that you are on the path towards strengthening, acquiring, thinking about some of these competencies. So as I said, service orientation, so a demonstrated desire to help others and a sensitivity to others' needs and feelings. And this is very important because medicine is a service profession. So med schools like to see evidence that you've been willing to give of your time freely to help others in need. It is kind of trite to say, I want to be a doctor because I want to help others. It's not trite to actually want to help others. You need to want to help others. You can't just sort of say it over and over again. You need to show it. And having things, service commitments in your time at Columbia is a really good way to show that you want to help others without having to say that sort of cliched thing over and over again. It's only a cliche if you just say it. It's not a cliche if you actually do it. So social skills, another competency, demonstrates an awareness of others' needs, goals, feelings, and the ways that social and behavioral cues affect people's interactions and behaviors, and that you adjust appropriately when you're interacting with someone. Now, this is a hard skill to assess until you're actually in a room with someone. But med schools like to see signs that you've put yourself in environments that force you to engage with others, that you've chosen some activities that have forced you to work on your ability to communicate with others. So cultural competence. This is a long definition. I'm not going to read it to you. You can read it maybe while I'm giving you a little bit of a riff on this from my perspective. Because when you hear a phrase like cultural competence, everybody has a general idea that they know what that means. But then if you say, so explain it to me, it can be a little bit challenging to actually put it in words. And this paragraph from the AAMC, does a pretty good job of it. But I like to think of it as, how do you respond when you encounter difference? People who are different from yourself. Are you respectful? Do you try to understand and be sensitive to others' perspectives? This is something that everyone needs to have and acquire. You're not born into cultural competence. No matter what your background is, you don't get that stamp of approval. It's something that you have to work to acquire. And I think the best way to do this, or at least to start on the journey of acquiring, it's a lifelong process to acquire cultural competence, but to start acquiring it is, I like to tell people to think about what feeds your own perceptions about the world, whether it's religion or politics or your parents' religion or your parents' politics, whether it's your ethnic or cultural or national background, your gender, your sexuality. Think about why you see the world the way you do. Why do you see what's important to you, and why is it become important to you? And then think about what you can do to learn about someone whose perceptions and worldview are fed by a really different background than your own. Where can you listen, learn, think, read, expose yourself to someone who just has it, who's everything about them has been fed by a different set of values and a different set of experiences. That's a good way to start developing that. Okay, teamwork. Medicine is a team endeavor in every possible incarnation in the world. And so you need to show evidence that you have made an effort to work collaboratively with others to achieve a common goal. Engineers have a big advantage in this arena because you're thrown into a team environment from day one, class one. College students have to work a little bit harder. They can get a little siloed sometimes in my experience. So, look for student groups and activities where, you really are presented with a team challenge, right? Like I said, a time when you have to work with a group of people to achieve a common goal. Oral communication. This is a little connected to social skills, but this is more specifically your ability to take what's in your head and communicate it to someone in terms that they can understand and make adjustments depending upon your audience. And you'll get lots of practice in this in your seminar classes, but you can also work on this whenever you try to explain the classes you're taking and what you're studying to people outside of school or outside of that individual class. Some of you will get involved in research, and research often provides you lots of opportunities to work on taking the sort of erudite and complicated scientific work that you're doing and make it accessible to a lay audience. And that translation is an important thing that, that med schools are looking for. Tutoring is a great way to work on this skill. Some of you will get a chance to work potentially as a teaching assistant for a class when you're a little bit older. Again, those are all going to be times when you can really work on your ability to communicate orally. Ethical responsibility to self and others. I'm not going to read the paragraph there. This one is a really hard thing to assess for medical schools, but it's a really important one. And you should work to have a really strong internal sense about right and wrong. Don't get in trouble, make good choices. A lapse in ethics is one of the worst things you can do for your future in medicine and your medical school application. So I'm here to tell you right now, and I hope you'll all hear this, there is no grade, no matter how bad, that is worse than cheating to get a good grade or a better grade. And I'm completely serious. I've got Columbia students who failed a course, F on their record, failed a course, and they still bounced back and went to medical school. And I have students, conversely then, I have students who are found guilty of cheating and have struggled mightily to get in, and in some cases have not been able to. You do not need all A's to go to medical school, and if there's any parents listening, I hope you'll take this into your child. You do not need all A's to go to medical school. What you do need is evidence that when things are rough, you took the honorable way through the storm. You did your best and you accepted the grades that you got. That will be endlessly more impressive to medical schools, because then they'll know that you really earned your good grades. If you get caught cheating, that calls into question every good grade, right? Because all of a sudden there's a little cloud over you. How'd you get the A? How'd you get the good grade? If you were willing to cheat to try to avoid a bad grade, how did you get the good grade, right? So I just, it's really, really important to not get myopic at any point because any grade can be bounced back from much more easily than a lapse in ethics can be bounced back from. Okay. Reliability and dependability. This one's pretty easy. Do what you say you're going to do, show up on time, and when you can't, communicate. Don't make appointments and skip them. Don't roll into class late every day. Don't commit to 4 hours a week of volunteering and then make a habit of canceling, right? Do what you say you're going to do, and when you can't, just communicate about it. Resilience and adaptability. Now, many of you already have, sadly, perhaps, honestly, abundant evidence already that you're resilient and adaptable. And it can be hard to prove this without difficult things happening to you. So again, I'll say, perspective is really important. Not everything will go your way at Columbia. You know, not everything is going to happen exactly the way you want it to. You're not going to get every grade that you want exactly the way you want it to. You're not going to get everything you apply for. Things aren't always going to be going your way. And when things aren't turning out the way you'd hoped, like I said, get perspective, because how you respond can sometimes be something that down the line ends up actually being really good evidence that you possess this tremendously important quality. So it's a really important quality, and it can be hard to assess. So like I said, you know, your failures aren't going to define you, but how you respond to them will. And besides being the caption for a great motivational poster, it's actually the truth. How you respond to things not going your way is actually will down the line potentially be a crucial part of your application to medical school. Capacity for improvement. Nobody is perfect. Assessing yourself accurately and finding ways to improve is crucial. Med schools love stories of the person who hated public speaking, but joined the debate team, or hated public speaking, but took a public speaking class. So push yourself outside your comfort zone, figure out what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and find ways to challenge your weaknesses. Evidence of that is a really great thing. Okay, I know I'm running out of time, but I know I've got you completely in the palm of my hand listening. So I'm gonna go on for just a little bit longer. And then if you've got questions, please put them into the Q&A. We're gonna stay at the end of the session at 1:30. You're free to go, but we're gonna stay on you know, for another 20-30 minutes and try to answer any questions that you have. So feel free to stick around on the call if you have questions, and put them in the Q&A, and we'll get to them after. Okay, so some opportunities at Columbia, organizations that you can get involved in if you're interested in pre-health. So we have a phenomenal student-run ambulance corps, CUEMS, that students train as first responders, get EMT certified, and serve on. We have an incredibly great chapter of AMSA, which is the American Medical Students Association. It's a national organization that actually has med students as well as pre-med students in it. And at Columbia, we just have a phenomenal chapter with lots of different subgroups that work on all sorts of great stuff. So that's a great program. We also have the Charles Drew Pre-Medical Society. So for those of you who don't know, Charles Drew was an African-American surgeon and researcher who lived in the first half of the 20th century. He is widely credited with developing and deepening our understanding of blood transfusions, and he pioneered the development of large-scale blood banks, which were used to great effect during World War II. He's a very famous character in history, but the history portion of this presentation is now over. So we have an organization called the Charles Drew Medical Society. It's a wonderful organization, very vibrant, lots of programming. It is open to everyone, absolutely. But its mission and its focus is to provide community and give support to pre-medical students who are underrepresented in medicine, who are from groups that are underrepresented in medicine. But it is in fact open to everyone, and it's a great organization. Peer Health Exchange is another national organization that has a really great Columbia chapter. Peer Health Exchange is a group that trains college students to teach a health curriculum in public schools in Manhattan that lack it. So lower resource schools, lower resource public schools that cannot provide a health education, you learn it, you go in and teach it. It's a really powerful experience in terms of showing your interest in healthcare, learning, teaching, and tutoring. It's very powerful to provide this much needed information to young people who are desperate for some of the stuff you teach about, decisions making around substance use. You teach about health and nutrition, and there's a whole variety of topics that you learn and you teach. And then we have a pre-dental society as well, Columbia Association of Pre-Dental Students, cleverly called CAPS. So that's there if you're interested specifically already in medicine. In dentistry, sorry. And then we have a massive research enterprise at Columbia University, and many of you will choose to get involved in research in one capacity or another. I will say research is across every discipline. If you're interested in wet lab research and science research, basic science research, that's fantastic, but maybe you're interested in public health research, maybe you're interested in anthropology research. You can really engage and show an interest in the production of new knowledge in any discipline, and the med schools will appreciate that. But we have a SURF program that stands for Summer Undergraduate Research Fellowship, and it's a monetary stipend that supports you sticking around in the summer to do full-time research in a lab. We have a course in the biology department, 3500, which is an independent research course where you can work in a lab off campus, I mean, a lab either at the downtown campus or up at the medical center and get course credit for it. For engineers, C's students, there's an abundant research available for you in the engineering school, and there will be lots of mechanisms for getting you connected to those research opportunities. And then we have a clinical research program at the hospital Mount Sinai, which is across the street from the Columbia campus. And that is a clinical research program in the Department of Emergency Medicine that you can volunteer and be a part of, which is also a phenomenal experience. So just I had mentioned early on that one of the things you need to do is get clinical exposure, exposure to doctors, nurses, patients at the site of healthcare delivery. And so there's lots of ways to do that. So there's volunteer programs at hospitals. There's working as a first responder as an EMT. There are clinics, there are hospice centers, private practice settings, nursing homes. There's a broad variety of places where you can be exposed to that kind of clinical care. And then there's also lots of service experiences that are available to you. There's a lot of free tutoring organizations that you can get involved with as a tutor. You know, unfortunately, in the city, there's abundant need for support for homeless shelters and soup kitchens in the city. We have something at Columbia called the Double Discovery Center, which is an organization at Columbia that uses college volunteers to work with high-achieving students locally who are either first generation, so first in their family to go to college, or come from low resource schools or low income families, but have as their goal to get to college. And so you work with them all through their time in high school to help them with tutoring, but then also all sorts of parts of their college application. You have a role in helping them, and that's a great service opportunity as well. And then of course we have a number of faith-based groups on campus. Many of you may get to campus and want to find your faith community very quickly, and a lot of those organizations have abundant service opportunities as well. So there's lots of opportunities for getting clinical exposure and service experience at Columbia. Okay, so a few things to consider, and we're almost done. I'm almost gonna make my time, although we started a little bit late, so I want a little bit of extra buffer for my, did I fit it into an hour or not? I did. Okay, so things to consider. Get off to a good start. Assess your study habits to see if they're adequate. Here's the thing about you. All of you did really well in high school. That's part of the requirement of getting to Columbia. And by the way, congratulations for getting to Columbia. All of you did really well in high school. Some of you did really well in high school because you're super smart and you have phenomenal study habits. Some of you did really well in high school because you're super smart, but you don't have great study habits. And that can make a big difference in how you do at Columbia, because Columbia is going to be harder and more challenging than high school. It's going to be conceptually more difficult. It's going to be more difficult in terms of the quantity of work that you're expected to do and the pacing of the work that you're expected to do. And some of you are going to struggle, and it's not because you're not smart, and it's not because we made a mistake. Our admissions team is a crack team of people, and they know exactly who to admit and who not to admit. And although there's lots of qualified people who don't make it to Columbia, but they don't make mistakes. They know who's here, and they know that you're qualified to be here. So everybody here deserves a seat at the table. And if you're struggling, it's not because we made a mistake. It might be because you don't have great study habits. And sometimes little tiny changes to your routine can yield incredible results academically. In fact, one little tip that I'm going to give you that I have so many people tell me that when I told them this, it radically changed their experience of studying. Pre-read your material. A lot of people just cruise into lecture, listen to the lecture. It's the first time they've heard the material. It doesn't all make sense to them. They have to look at the textbook. They look at it a few weeks later when they're studying for a midterm. Look at what's coming each lecture and look at it ahead of time so that when you hear it in lecture, it's not the first time you've seen it. Game changer for some people. So it can be small things like that that can radically improve your performance. So if you're struggling, don't build up a lot of shame around it. Don't decide that you don't deserve to be here. Get help. And I'm going to talk in just a second about how to get help, because we've got lots and lots of resources, because lots and lots of people need it. So ask for help if you need it. Study, study, study. I know that sounds like silly, but seriously, you're gonna have to study a lot. You're gonna have to study a lot. You have to probably study more than you did in high school. And you need to find out from the, right out of the gate, you need to find out exactly how much time you need to do well in high school, because the algorithm of time versus fun that worked for you in high school may not work in college. You may need to crank out a different algorithm and create a different balance. So, you know, spend a lot of time studying until you figure out exactly how much time you need to achieve. However, find a balance. Don't get overextended outside or inside the classroom. There's no prizes for staying up all night, for not eating well, for not exercising, for not taking care of yourself. There's only great personal benefits down the line to learning a good balance for yourself. Join the listserv, which is on our website. The URL will be up again in a second. Join our listserv. That's an important thing, a way we communicate with you. So join the listserv. Get to know your advisors and your faculty members. Talk to faculty, please. They're human beings just like you and me. They want to talk to you. It will enhance your education to talk to them. It will enhance their experience of teaching if you go talk to them. Go to their office hours. I mean, I realize now that office hours may be via Zoom, but office hours will exist. So talk to your faculty. Talk to faculty. I don't want to hear from anybody as a junior that they don't have any faculty that they've made a connection to, because that's your responsibility to get out there and connect with faculty. Get to know yourself, be honest about your strengths, be honest about your weaknesses. Don't only do things that capitalize on your strengths. Challenge yourself to do things that engage your weaknesses as well. And again, as I just gave you a little speech, take care of yourself. Med schools want to see evidence that you know how to do this, that you know how to sleep, eat, exercise, find community. Really, college, life, everything is about finding that balance. Again, as I said before, don't be afraid to ask for help. It's no fun to learn this the hard way. As I said, medicine's a team endeavor. Scientific research is a team endeavor. Learning about science should not be a solitary experience. Work in study groups, go to department help rooms, avail yourself of tutoring. We've got free tutoring available at Columbia. Teaching assistants are there to help. Faculty are there to help. Peer tutors. Everyone is here to help, so use the resources. There's no shame in it. There's this many resources available. Guess what? Not because just you need it, but because hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students need academic support. So don't hesitate at all to reach out for academic support. Learn your limits. Like I said, find how much time you really do need to do your courses. Find out how many courses are really the right amount for you to take, what the right mix of is science versus humanities or social science, etc. Just figure out all that balance. And be present. Don't spend a lot of time worrying about things that are several years down the road. I don't want to talk to you about the MCAT right now. I mean, I'll talk to you about anything once school starts, for sure. But you know, the lesson is, you don't need to be worried about the MCAT right now. You don't need to be worried about how to get into Columbia Medical School right now. You need to be worried about how to win your first semester of college. And how to win your first semester of college is to be present, enjoy it, do well in your classes, find friends, find community. If you do all that, you've won first semester of college. And that's the goal. The goal is to be present and win your first semester of college, which means enjoy it, do well, find friends. Don't just check off boxes. The med schools don't want to feel like you're just sitting there with a list going, clinical experience, check, orgo, check. They want to feel like you're a whole person, letting his or her interests develop, their interests develop organically, and that you've explored them. Chart your own path, do things you love. They want to see whole people. They don't want to just see pre-med automatons. Oh my gosh, I'm done. I think I did it with 2 minutes to spare personally. And now I think Megan and Davina are going to come back and see what you've got to ask and see if I can answer questions. I love answering questions. This is why I do what I do. So if you've got questions, I'd love to try to answer them. And there's our URL for our website. And like I said, the landing page on this URL about midway down has instructions for getting on our listserv.
Okay, so I'm going to go forward and give you some questions that we can answer. So the first question is, how can I figure out whether or not I genuinely want to pursue medicine?
Oh my gosh, that is a really good question. And thank you for asking that, because you do not have to know everything right now. You can question it. You can wonder. You can have lots of possible options. And you know, if you're interested in bodies and healthcare and wellness, there are a lot of different careers that aren't medicine per se. So an important thing to do is, we think, it would be hard it's hard to do now given the situation with COVID, and it's even hard in the best of circumstances as a first semester student to get involved as a volunteer in a healthcare setting. But when you can, do that. See if you can sign up for some hospital volunteering. In the meantime, read. Read books that are about the experiences of physicians. Read books about healthcare. Bend the ear of any doctor, nurse, healthcare provider that you can find about, how did they make their career choice? What have they loved about it? What have they not loved about it? But I think the best thing that you can do when it's possible, which might not be until the spring or potentially a little bit later, is to get yourself exposed to medicine in some way. Because that's really, liking GChem is not going to tell you whether or not you want to be a doctor. Lots of doctors hated general chemistry, or wasn't their favorite thing. So know that the only way to really find out if it's the right career for you is not to find out how much you love or don't love the sciences. You need to have scientific capacity, but the real way to find out if you want to be engaging with people who are not well, who need that kind of help, is to expose yourself to it and see. And most people have a pretty quick reaction to it. They get into a hospital setting and they're like, oh my gosh, I love this. This is where I want to spend the rest of my life. And other people are like, well, I'm going to go back to the lab. I really want to learn about new knowledge and feed healthcare, from the lab perspective. So exposing yourself to it is really the best way to start figuring that out. And Megan and Davina, I know I'm bossy and talking all the time, but by all means, join in.
So I guess maybe that's a good transition to questions about MD, PhD programs. So some of the questions are the prerequisites the same? Will the pre-health curriculum prepare students also to pursue the combined degree?
Yes. So the combined degree, the MD, PhD, is a degree combination that has your career at the nexus between clinical care and medical research. And so the prerequisites are the same. You take the MCAT the same way. The thing that you need to do while you're an undergraduate is pursue research pretty heavily, because it really is a research degree. It's a degree that leads to a career in which you are spending the preponderance of your time in the lab conducting basic science research, and then a portion of your time in the clinic seeing clinically relevant patients to the research that you're conducting. So it's a very, very powerful degree combination, but it is really a research degree. And so you need, by the time you leave Columbia, you need to have shown a sustained commitment to one lab. That's generally a couple of academic years in a lab, run your own project, really gone beyond just sort of being a research assistant and being someone who demonstrates that they can be the driving force of creating a hypothesis, creating a protocol for testing it, executing the protocol, and analyzing the results. So it's really a research degree, but everything that we just told you is still relevant. You still do need to expose yourself to clinical medicine to make sure that you're going to be okay with the clinical portion of your training. You still need to do all of the same prerequisites. It's the same application down the line. There's a few slight differences to it if you're MD, PhD, but everything that we've told you thus far is relevant.
I would just add to that. So most MD, PhD programs are in scientific fields. And so most students who are preparing for that endeavor will study science, or engineering. It's less likely that you would study history and just do the prerequisites and then go and do an MD, PhD program. I think their expectation is that you're really immersing yourself in science. There are a couple of MD, PhD programs that are in the humanities, and we have from time to time have students become interested in that, but they are a lot less prevalent than the basic science MD, PhD programs.
Yeah, and some of the MD, PhD programs even have, as Megan suggested, a requirement that you have a major in the sciences.
Davina, you want to take some of the curricular questions?
Yes, sorry, I was dismissing some of the questions that we were already answering. Okay, I think the next question actually was about the medical school acceptance rate for Columbia students. With the students that we work with, our acceptance rate is about 85% for the students that go through the committee process and to being accepted for medical school. So I think Nikki also talked about, students taking time in between So we work with students at various levels that are applying to medical school, from those wanting to go straight through to those who are alum as well. And so that incorporates that entire group of students that we work with, just to clarify for some students, because I know that some may want it to be broken down like by what year, or like at, if I take 1 year versus if I take 2 years, is there a higher acceptance rate? And we really just group that together with all of the students that we work through in any given year.
And I will let you all know that number, which goes up and down every year, maybe it's 86, maybe it's 88, maybe it's 87. That's actually a very high percentage. It's about double the national average. A lot of institutions around the country have averages that are much closer to 40% of their applicants getting in. So, and we also will say that, for the percentage of students from Columbia who don't get in, it rarely comes as a huge shock, because we are really good advisors. And our goal is to tell you all the things that you need to do to be the strongest applicant possible, so that if you work with us closely and you heed our advice and work with us creatively to get you on the right path, I think you have a really good chance of getting in. And if you don't, you will know what the weaknesses were, and we can regroup and make a plan for strengthening and moving forward. And if you add our reapplicants into the mix, our number goes much higher. We have a really good, strong program here and a good success rate of getting students. You get yourself actually to medical school, but we have a good record of supporting you and getting you there.
So the next question is really more COVID related, and that is, how are we dealing with laboratory courses on campus this year? And so I can take that. I have a little bit of information. So our chemistry department is developing lab options to be able to be done remotely, so that in your first year, you will certainly be able to complete the year of chemistry with the lab, whether you are on campus in the fall or do it remotely in the spring. They're really committed to making this as robust as they can, and they've been working throughout the summer to figure out the best way to translate this, and we trust that they're going to be ready to launch that in the fall. Additionally, one of the other questions that's coming up is around AP credit, and how can you potentially apply some of your AP credit. So, Nikki, do you want to take that?
Yeah, what is it? What is the question exactly? How does it differ from?
Well, there's a number of questions about AP, so I just thought maybe we would cover it more generally.
Okay. Yeah. So AP credit is something that can definitely be an important part of your ultimate rounding out of credit requirements for prerequisites. So, for example, when a school requires 8 credits of general chemistry, that's, they want 8 credits of chemistry. They're not saying that has to be this specific course, that specific course. They want to see credit totals of inorganic chemistry. So if you get jumped ahead into a more advanced track, and then you have a 4 or 5 on the AP or IB exam, you will automatically, after you complete that higher level sequence at Columbia with a C or better, you'll be awarded just 3 or 6 credits of chemistry. And a lot of the med schools will take that as their need to see 8 credits or 6 credits of inorganic chemistry. So in chemistry, those credits can be used to round out your preparation. They will often also take AP credit in math, although it's a little bit complicated at Columbia, because in order to get those credits, you have to take an actual course at Columbia, and the course you actually take to get the credits is enough for the medical schools. You don't really need more than that to fulfill the med school requirements, with the caveat of wanting to take that semester of stats, They won't take AP credit for bio, unfortunately. And the med schools differ a little bit in terms of how they take, in terms of how they accept AP credit. Some, in my experience, a lot of them, take it pretty readily, but there are some that have different requirements around AP credit. And like I said, we have a comprehensive list of the different med schools and the way they treat AP credit. But there's a lot of subjects that they won't take it for. They're not going to take AP credit. And Megan, you can interrupt me if I'm wrong, because occasionally I am, but they won't take it for English generally. They're not going to take it for bio. They'll take it mostly. We see that people end up using it for chemistry, to be honest, is what they mostly use it for here.
I think, you know, what Nikki said is that every school really has some different requirements around AP, and some are very generous and they readily take AP and they're fine with it. The problem is that you can't prepare just for one school or the school that you think is your dream school. When you apply to medical school, you're applying to, you know, 15 to 20 medical schools, and we don't want you to limit your opportunities by not having a course requirement. So we are really helping you to prepare for what we would consider the lowest common denominator, so that you're going to not limit your options down the road. So for example, Columbia Medical School doesn't really accept AP except if you've taken an advanced class in that area, where another medical school might accept your AP course credit for physics. But that would limit your opportunity because you wouldn't be able to then apply to Columbia, right? So we're really trying to help you to figure out, you know, the coursework that you need that's going to enable you to have the most flexibility and be prepared for the most amount of programs down the line. And so that's the way we look at it. But certainly we always advise students individually, and, you know, and you have those choices to make. And as we said, we're here for you throughout your education, and we're happy to have those conversations individually.
There are also questions along the line of medical schools taking online courses, and due to COVID and courses being online, will medical schools be accepting of it? So this information, you know, is rapidly changing as, you know, as everyone's trying to process what's going through and what's happening. However, with the spring online courses and the past summer 2020 online courses, medical schools have been flexible about taking those classes online, given that many, if not all schools, had to go online and students have to take these courses online. So I think that as you progress through your coursework at Columbia, this will be a continuing conversation as we see how, you know, the landscape continues to change and when we can actually go back to taking classes in person.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the thing about what's happening now is it's happening to everybody. And the med schools, if they were to decide not to take online courses for the fall, would find themselves flat out of applicants at some point, because this is really happening across the academia, across the country. And, you know, med schools some schools have always taken online courses to round out prereqs. Some schools have never taken online courses to round out prereqs, but everyone seems to be adjusting and adapting to the new normal, which is that right now, a lot of instruction is happening online. And also just to be aware, there's a difference between remote learning and online learning. I think some of the med schools have balked at courses that are purely online, meaning those are courses that are completely self-directed. You get access to a website and you just work your way through the material. That's really different from the kind of learning you're going to be doing at Columbia, even if they're technically utilizing technology and online systems to educate you. They're going to be more in the model of remote learning, meaning you're not self-pacing yourself. You're moving through the material with a group of people, with an instructor, with course meetings. And that model is seen a little bit differently within the world of remote and online learning. And I think that the med schools appreciate that. And in their acceptance of online, what we're loosely calling all of that online learning, you know, they're showing a preference for schools for taking courses at schools that are doing more the remote model learning rather than the pure self-directed online learning model. So, you know, the courses that are being developed with really, you know, so much work is being done this summer to create incredible online content and possibilities for the remote learning that's going to happen this fall. So I really don't think that you should worry that you're going to be at a disadvantage down the line. I think everybody's going to see what you did and the work that you did here as perfectly adequate in fulfilling their expectations.
So there's another couple questions about whether it's possible to pursue a major or a concentration while on the pre-med track to sort of talk about the, interdisciplinary interests that you might have. There was another question about, is it really possible to do a non-science major with all the requirements? And I think we just want to reiterate that, yes, anything's possible. We've had students who have had really diverse interest and studied history and had a concentration in public health while also pursuing the pre-med curriculum. I think, yes, it's probably easier in some ways or more efficient to have it overlap with your major. So if you're a bio major or neuroscience major, the pre-med curriculum overlaps really nicely. But if you have other interests, we absolutely encourage you to explore them. Some of our best applicants come from areas outside of science, and it really just takes planning. And I think that your advising dean here is ready to make 4-year plans with you to talk about the different scenarios. And I think it seems overwhelming when we list out all these requirements, but you have 4 years and you can really pack a lot in. And as we said, everything is possible. Studying abroad is possible. We love when students study abroad. It's such an amazing experience. It's one of the only times in your life that you'll get to go and spend, live somewhere for 6 months free of other responsibilities. There's lots and lots of room to fit it all in, and we can help you to do that. And your advising dean can really help you with that planning.
Yeah, and the thing that I'll say, building on what Megan said, is that anything is possible, right? You've got, everybody's going to have core requirements, everybody's going to have major requirements, and then everybody's going to have some amount of electives, courses that you can just take that are just there. They don't have to fit into pre-med. They don't have to fit into your department. If you major in a course, like Megan said, biology or neuroscience, where there's a lot of overlap between your major requirements and your pre-med requirements, you'll have a few more electives. If you major in English or something completely where there's no overlap whatsoever at all between your pre-med requirements and your major requirements, you'll use up some of your electives to do that major. But if that major is really what you want to do, then using up some of your elective space to do that is a small, seems like a small price to pay. But it's definitely doable. The big difference is sort of how many courses will you end up with when the dust settles that were just, something you wanted to take just because you were interested in it. That can shift depending upon, which course of study that you
we also had a question about what do people do during their gap time. And I think that that's also kind of an extension of the question about whether or not you can fit everything in. And I think it's all about what your timeline is and what your timeline looks like. Like Nikki and Megan said, it can be a little bit overwhelming to think about, like, I have 4 years and I need to pack all of this in. But students don't, typically the majority of our students don't go to medical school right after they complete their undergraduate studies. So if you spend, some of your time during your undergraduate years, taking some of those courses that you want to take, studying abroad, and you also take gap time, some of those ways that you can fill that time are doing some of the, like a lot of our students will do clinical research positions or work as medical assistants or something in the hospital setting. So they're also fulfilling those other competencies and requirements that we talked about in terms of being a pre-med student. So I think that you have to kind of think about what it is that you want to do. And then when you're working with your advisor, you can better figure out what your timeline looks like, because everyone's timeline and everyone's goals are not the same.
Yeah, and what you do with your gap time may be determined by what you need to do, right? There may be some piece of your application when you come to the end of your time at Columbia that needs to be strengthened. And so, people often use their gap time to strengthen their application, do something that strengthens their application. But we have a lot of people that do big service commitments like Teach for America or Peace Corps or AmeriCorps, which is the sort of domestic Peace Corps. As Davina said, they do clinical research, they do lab research. There's lots of different possibilities, and it can often be driven, sometimes be driven by just what you would like to do during that time, but it can also be driven by what you need to do to strengthen that application.
So we have a number of questions about chemistry in their first year and taking the lab alongside, and do you have to take it during a certain semester? So I'm just going to cover that. So the first thing, the recommendation for chemistry in your first year is really based on the fact that chemistry serves as both prerequisite to organic chemistry as well as biology. And so that's why it makes sense to do that course first. The general chemistry lab is just 1 semester, and you can take it either in your first semester or in your second semester. You could even delay it into a further semester. But we just, really have you think about sort of the planning going forward, because if you have all the labs sort of build up, then you're really filling your schedule up pretty quickly with longer laboratory times. And so that's just something to think about. Organic chemistry has the lab that in 2 semesters alongside. So it's Orgo 1 with an Orgo 1 lab and Orgo 2 with an Orgo 2 lab. So if you waited to take Gen Chem lab, you'd be doing more than 1 lab in a semester. So sometimes that's difficult. Another question was about AP credit for chemistry and taking intensive Orgo. And yes, as we said, all of those options will fulfill your pre-medical requirements. And so getting those AP credits will sort of give the medical school the understanding that you have that and that you placed into this course, and then that would work for you.
The other thing I will say is that, I encourage all of you that are interested to take the placement exam, but the placement exam is just allows you to place into these higher level ones. You don't have to take the higher level ones if you don't want to. It's important to find the one that's not just going to be remedial for you, but in fact involves some new content and new challenges. But there's shifting, it can be a bit of a little shifting landscape. And so, just because you place into one level and technically could do it, if you look at your whole schedule and what the demands are going to be on you and how confident you actually feel about that content, it doesn't require you to take a section. And if you're confused about which you should do, that's certainly a conversation that you can have with your main advisor. They can help you figure out which the right one is to take. But it's important to know that just because you receive a result on an exam doesn't mean that you have to follow it to the letter exactly. You can't go beyond your placement, but you can make a choice to maybe go one below your placement.
One of the questions asked, in addition to the advisor that the students were assigned last week, will they be assigned a specific pre-health advisor? So the pre-health advising works a little bit different than your general advising. You can schedule an appointment with any one of us while you're at at Columbia. You can decide that you would, that you want to meet with all 3 of us and see which one that you have a better rapport with or a better relationship with. You can meet with one person and decide that that's the person that you would prefer to meet with, and that's the person that you want to go to. Once you get into the application process, it becomes a little bit different, but for pre-health advising, in general, you can decide which one of us you would like to meet with.
Yeah. Once you're in the application process, we do divvy you up and you do get a point person. And that's often guided by the person that maybe you've developed the best relationship with along the way. But there will come a point in your process where you will reduce to just 1 point person, but you're a long ways from that now. And, you can see any of us now. The one thing that we ask is that you don't bring the same set of questions to all 3 of us. We work very closely together. We sometimes see each other more than we see our families. And so, if you ask me a question, and then you take the same question to Megan tomorrow, guess what? You've wasted a half hour, because she's going to tell you. Sometimes we find ourselves saying the exact same thing down to the letter almost. So we just ask that you can certainly see different ones of us and explore who you have the best rapport with. But there's really no need to get my advice about a topic and then Megan's advice about a topic and then Davina's advice about a topic, because we really work very closely together. So our messaging and our decision-making about different things is very similar.
We'd also just add to that so we, as we mentioned earlier, are part of the Center for Student Advising, which is where your main advisor is housed. And we interact with our colleagues there very closely, and we help to educate them about medical school prerequisites and all of those issues. And so they're very well equipped to answer your questions about the pre-med curriculum. So you don't need to make a separate appointment to ask us, will the Chem AP, work for you? They're really able to answer a lot of those questions. And And then they consult with us if they have, something that comes up that they don't know, or then they will recommend that you come and meet with us. So I think, just want to say that, especially in this initial time, is to really to get to know that general advisor that you've been assigned and create that relationship, because they're going to be working with you for the full 4 years. And they're really amazing resources that we work closely with. So I think we're running out of time at this point. And so we want to really thank everyone for being here. We apologize for any questions that we didn't get to on the chat. But as I said, all of these questions can be posed to your general advisor, and more than likely they'll be able to answer that. And if not, to seek our guidance on that.
And we will say that we are here and we're very excited to welcome you to campus and to work with you. Your general advisor is definitely going to be your main point person for the next few weeks. We are very busy getting our current med school applicants on the road to their application. So we would just tell you that we're not as available to meet at this stage, but we are certainly super excited to meet with you come fall, come Labor Day. But everything you need to know right now for this coming semester, your main advisor is well equipped to get you on that first road. And then we'd love to get to know you better starting this fall after Labor Day.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Okay.